Hey guys, how you going? It's VaulSC here, and today we're going to talk about the brand new ITS season, Stakeout. It's season 11, and we've had a bit of an update, and for the rest of the next 12 months, we're going to be playing with some different ITS missions and rules. And in this video, I'm going to go over my thoughts about it, my reaction, and a bit of a summary of what the community has been saying about the new edition. Just a bit of a spoiler alert right off the bat. This is not going to be a positive review. I know that some of you guys don't like it when I criticize Corvus Belli and spend a lot of time naysaying and criticizing and generally whining about this and that, the stuff that I don't like. But I'm sorry to say that's what most of this video is going to be about. I personally don't like what they've done with the new season. I think they've done a bad job. Already within like 24 hours of it being posted, there are a lot of rules questions on the forums. How does this work? How does that work? Why did they do this? Why didn't they do that? And a lot of legitimate complaints, and we're going to go through them. But just to warn you, if you've just sat down, you've got your drink ready and your snacks, and you're going to watch VaulSC talk for a little while, if you're hoping for some happy optimism about how awesome CB is, probably not the video that you were looking for. But maybe we can learn things, and hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll start playing the new season and everything's just fine and dandy. So let's try and go through it. Normally, I mean, what I was hoping to do with this video, like I did last year, was to go through every individual mission and explain about how every mission had changed and just tell you my tactics about how to do each mission in ITS. And we're not going to do that this time around because really they've only introduced one new mission, and that is Countermeasures. The rest of them are generally unchanged. Obviously, they removed Xenotex, they brought in the Liaison Officer type thing. You've got the Concilium Watch rule, which we'll talk about. But I'm not going to go through every single mission just because so much of it hasn't changed. And that's partly what's disappointing for me. They've taken out Frostbite, which was possibly the best mission in the season last time. It worked really well. A lot of people really liked it. And they've removed that. They've brought in Countermeasures, which I think is a very weak mission. And a lot of the other terrible missions that were in there before are still in there. I'm not a fan of Power Pack, not really a fan of Quadrant Control, Safe Area, the Armory, Transmission Matrix, don't really like Highly Classified, obviously, Biotech Vor, don't really like them. Looking there, I mean, if you're forcing me to play on ones that I would enjoy, I would say maybe Firefight's pretty good. Supremacy can be okay. Supplies can be okay. Unmasking's probably actually the best mission in this pack. But it's just hit and miss, and there's so much that could be improved about these missions in my view. Okay, the main ITS sort of logistics stuff remains unchanged. Not a lot of a shake-up there. I'm going to try and scroll through to the actual special rules. Here it is, Season 11. During the Season 11, following rules are applied. Here we go here. So we had Ironclad last time, which was where tags all have Fatality level 1, and that's worked out well. People have liked that, and that's stayed, and that's now been sort of, I think, institutionalized, really. I liked Fatality level 1 because it meant that when you look at a tag and you see the massive gun that it's got, it actually has a slight bonus in game rather than, you know, you've got your tiny HMG versus your massive HMG. It was a little bit silly. But also just because tags, when you pay that many points to them, they ought to be devastating when they shoot their big guns. But the more controversial thing is the new rule they've added, which is Armored Tactical Scanner, where all tags have tactical awareness. Now, if all you've done is read through the new pack and you've just seen this, you might think, okay, that's pretty cool. But in context, what's actually happened that's caused the controversy around this is that a lot of the tags who have less than 70 points on their cost have increased by about 4 points overall. And the expensive tags haven't had any changes to their points cost, whereas right across the board, every tag's got tactical awareness. Now, the astute among the audience can already see the problem there, right? So there were already some tags in the game which were very good and saw a lot of usage because they have high capability, they're powerful. You're thinking the Avatar, the Marut, the Sphinx, the Cutter, I think would be my first go-to suggestions. Those tags now have an additional order that they can spend every turn, and they don't cost any more. So they've been buffed. Did they need to be buffed? No. They were already seeing use. They're already quite powerful. Now you're going to see situations where if the player doesn't have a good counter to them or gets a bit unlucky, those tags are going to steamroll even more. They're going to be even more oppressive than they were, which isn't something that the game needed. I say this almost every single video that's an analysis video. There's going to be a crowd coming in and saying, well, it hasn't broken the game. Tags aren't going to win every tournament. That's not the point. It's just not the point. Why would you damage something in any particular way, big or small, when you don't have to damage it? It's just like living in a house where you write on your wall with a Sharpie, draw a big penis sign, a symbol, a picture on your hallway, and yeah. Somebody might say, well, you can still live in the house, it's not a big problem, but you didn't need to do it in the first place. This is just going to stick there forever. So then you've got the smaller tags, and some of these tags didn't see much use at all. The Guija is an average tag. Then you've got the Geckos, of course, gaining tactical awareness, stuff like that, the Anaconda. And you look at some of these tags and you go, well, they sucked before, they'll still suck now, and they're more expensive. One thing about tactical awareness that you got to realize is that spending an order in a vacuum isn't just automatic value, right? So you've got your tag on the battlefield. Just by spending an order isn't going to equate to just some enemy model dying or an objective being completed. In a real game of infiNity, you've got to think carefully about which of your models is going to go on a bit of a run, go on a bit of a push, and spend a lot of orders on it to get work done. It's not just about moving and shooting. You've got to find where to deploy your model. You need to move into position. You may not want to pass a fire lane where you're just going to get hit by a flash pulse. You want to shoot back, kill a smaller target. You're going to miss a lot of the time. Things are going to change. Something's going to come out of hidden deployment. You have to research what to do. And by taking a tag in the first place, you're committed to a particular strategy. You're committed to certain tactics. And tactical awareness is something which really just improves a particular run. And if you find yourself in a game where you're not going to be making that run, well, tactical awareness isn't particularly important. Tactical awareness is very useful in a link team where you know you're going to be moving out with them, and some of that's going to have to be movement anyway. So even if the model that's doing a lot of the attacking and shooting doesn't have tactical awareness, it can benefit from tactical awareness elsewhere in the team. So coming back to tags, is it going to mean that a tag like a Gecko is much better and more viable? I wouldn't say so. I don't think so. Even in the duo situation, being able to charge around the battlefield, you're still either going to get value out of them, even though in the same way that you did before, or you're going to still fail to get value out of them because they're going to run into some trouble, like hacking or a TO sniper or an Emarat or something they weren't expecting, and have to sort of shut down their run, regardless of how many orders they had available to them. The Onyx list with the Harris team of a couple of Zeodrons, again, it's going to be better, but it's still going to run into that same problem where either it's going to have a nice, decent run that 10 orders would have been able to get you anyway, or it's going to run into a situation where it turns out to be absolutely crap. Your opponent has a great counter for them, and it doesn't matter whether you have 10 orders or 12 orders or 15 orders to spend on them, they're still going to run into trouble, and you're going to lose. So a lot of people complaining, and rightly so, that Corvus Belli have taken a very ham-fisted approach to this. They have made good tags that didn't need a buff better, and they've made weaker tags that weren't going to benefit from tactical awareness anyway, even worse because they cost more now. So I feel like they've fumbled it there. Moving on to Liaison Officer. So this has in some ways replaced Xenotechs. Xenotechs were interesting because you had to attach them to something that could move them, so you can't put them in a link team. But unfortunately, you have to pass a willpower check during the game and spend a lot of orders on them. With Liaison Officer, you have to attach it to a Forward Observer, and the roll is made at the end of the game with a +3, so it's a lot easier to do. And you get to spend command tokens to redo it, and you don't lose an objective point if you fail to do it. So this can be something useful in a mission where, it's likely to come down to a bit of a draw, and this can tip the balance. If it's a mission where there's a big sort of swing of 4 objective points up for grabs and it's only going to go one way, this is not going to matter as much. But the problem with Liaison Officer is that it's easier for some factions rather than others. Because you can't be in hidden deployment, you may not want to put it on a hidden deployment, a model that's capable of hidden deployment. So if you look at Onyx, and a lot of people are saying on the forums that Onyx really can only use the Malignos for this, and the Malignos kind of has to be deployed as a marker. So you're limiting that faction's choice of liaison officer to just one model, and you're limiting that model to not using hidden deployment at all. And if your opponent, if you're going to be interacting with the Malignos and doing stuff with it, it might die during the course of the game. Whereas other factions can pick a model that they were going to take anyway in any ordinary list that was going to stay in the deployment zone and just move out and quite easily play the role of the liaison officer later. So I don't like it. It's not well thought out. I don't feel like it's been well play tested, and I don't think they've thought of every faction equally when they've done it. I really hate any sort of disparity between one faction having a better go at ITS than another. I don't feel it balances out in the long run in a meaningful way. I just think it's annoying, and it's just bad game design in my view. I mean, it's okay for them to have rules like this in the game in theory, in spirit, but just, implement it better is what we're saying. Concilium Watch. This brings us back to all of those nice little inserts of the rulebook where it says, this weapon's really badass. It's been banned by the Concilium Convention. And that was very a capturing of our imaginations when we first got into infiNity and read through the rulebook. But now they've implemented it in the game in a kind of strange way. So you can get up to one objective point if you fulfill all of the following conditions, and it is quite hard to fulfill all these conditions, so often it doesn't even come up, which begs the question, why have the rule in the first place? But if you have a journalist, and by the way, Army 6 has been updated recently, a whole bunch of models have the journalist rule now. So if you've got a journalist running around and it's not dead, or null state we should say, and you've got an enemy model who's in a null state in your zone of control at the end, meaning that it's easy to do this if you have second turn and therefore the last turn, you might be able to get a point if that downed enemy model has one of these items here in the chart. Bear in mind that if you're up against O12 and they have Peacekeeper, then it doesn't matter whether they have the item or not. So this is a mechanic which benefits O12 right off the bat without taking anything away from O12. So it's like, why give this one faction in the official competitive season rule set an advantage? That doesn't make sense. Secondarily, people who care about the fluff and the imaginative side and the simulation of an actual conflict in a sci-fi world, people who care about that kind of thing are saying, well, okay, I don't really see any plasma guns on there, but we've got a shotgun there. So why would the Concilium Convention come along and ban your shotgun, but these aliens are running around with plasma guns? And for that matter, the Concilium Convention is supposed to be something that affects the human sphere, human civilization, society, and then you've got these aliens outside of that. How is it that they are being managed by the policing of this Concilium Convention Watch? I don't get that, and people are saying that seems really stupid, and I agree. I think it is really stupid. Civilians have had a little bit of an update, and finally we get to talk about something positive. Civilians are actually not going to cancel some of these attacks. So templates that affect a civilian are not considered null, but will have no effect on the civilian, which means you can now fire a chain rifle directly through an HVT and hit a guy on the other side, that kind of thing. And what that's stopping is people going synchronized civilian and then walking around the battlefield with it, preventing enemy models from using their direct template weapons or their, in some cases, their the template version of their impact weapons like heavy rocket launchers and so forth. So that tactic's been taken away. So finally we get to applaud Cause Valley for doing something right and say, congratulations, well done, you guys are great for doing that. But the fact that they've recognized the need to fix a part of their game, they've recognized the need to be so nuanced and thoughtful about fixing something that is fixable, really makes me wonder why a lot of other stuff that is in the game that needs fixing also hasn't been fixed. It seems to be a very lopsided approach to doing things. I don't really understand. It's very patchy. Landing assistance is still there. I'm glad about that. It didn't break the game last time around, and it made us appreciate a lot of drop trooper profiles in ways that we didn't before, so that is fantastic. Long service basically means that the hunting party mission is a bit more straightforward, and if you take characters, they're going to be more useful for mission completion. I still think that mission's kind of dumb, but at least you've got characters which are definitely going to be classified for that, and also for some classified objectives. Okay, data trackers generally the same. Reduced combat groups generally the same. Closed battle lists, who cares about those? Extras. Spec Ops, pretty much the same. Limit insertion, pretty much the same. Tactical window, this is a fun one. I know you guys will enjoy this. So I put out a custom mission called Tactical Window, I think like a year ago, or further ago than that actually. And I submitted it in White Noise's Design a Custom Mission campaign because they said, Corvus Belli going to have a look at them and possibly include one of them in the new ITS season. I think they've done that, and I think they've used the Countermeasures mission in particular. But I suspect maybe one of them saw the name of my mission and liked the name and just lifted it. I don't mind people like using my intellectual property, by the way. It's out there in the public for a reason. I want people to use this sort of stuff, but the way in which it's been used seems kind of silly to me. Like they like the name of a mission, not the content of the mission, and they've taken the name and applied it to something completely different, which is a special ITS rule where for the tournament you have to take an army list of 15 or less. Stopping people from taking these big spam lists. So if you don't like running into these massive 20 order lists all the time, then that's the kind of thing for you. But to call it Tactical Window, I thought was a bit comical. Soldiers of Fortune seems to be the same. Escalation, nothing to report there. So, classifieds, I didn't really give this a pretty serious read through. It does seem to be pretty much similar to before. I've always hated classifieds, and that hasn't particularly changed very much, but it's here to stay. As for the missions themselves, again, just the same flawed group of missions in my view. There's a lot that could be better about them. By the way, there's a Google Drive folder where I've got my custom missions if you want to try some of those. I've put that out recently. Obviously, with some of them, for example, acquisition, you've removed Xenotech and there's a Liaison Officer there. So in places where we previously saw, okay, you get +1 point for having the Xenotech in that zone or next to that objective or in this room, it's the Liaison Officer which is taking over that. Let's go over to Countermeasures and we'll talk about it. So at first glance, Countermeasures seems quite similar to Highly Classified because it's all about, capturing more of the classified objectives more so than doing anything else. And we already have a mission that's all about that. The main thing that's different about this one is that there are three different kinds of classifieds at a time that are both public, that both players are trying to go for, but they rotate and they can be discarded. So the idea is that you start the game by dealing 3 of them out of the deck, and both players are using the same deck. And at the start of every turn, every player turn that is, the player who's in the active situation could pick one that they don't like, discard it, deal another one, and then for the rest of the turn they've got those 3 to try and complete. And then the player who is going next after that, maybe some of them are completed, new ones have come back in, and the player who's going next can do the same thing. Discard the one that they can't really do or will have difficulty doing and continue through. So problem number 1. The person going first might be fortunate enough to see a very easy objective out there to do. So they'll discard one that they don't like so much and go and do the maybe 1 or 2 that they can do. And those will be discarded, I believe, and new ones will replace them if I've read that correctly. And because they will have done that, it will therefore make it just that little bit less likely that their opponent will be able to do ones that come out, because they may be replaced by classifieds that are difficult for both players. Some people have said that one way to go is to try and complete objectives that your opponent would have wanted to complete, denying them the ability to do that, which kind of makes sense. So all in all, it's very RNG, very luck-based, and it can benefit the player who has the initiative there because, there might be a run of a whole bunch of objectives that neither player can complete in the deck. You get unlucky, 6 or 7 cards there where neither player can really, do them very easily, except for 1 or 2 that the player going first is able to complete straight away and get a leg up. To compound that and make that worse, if you're going first, you've got your data tracker ready to go, and you can nominate your data tracker after deployment, and you can go straight for the objective you want to do with your data tracker and possibly kill their one, and you get a bonus 2 objective points for that. Data tracker even gets a special order. So, for example, let's say you and I are playing a game of Countermeasures, and I'm playing ISS, and you're playing your faction, and we deal the cards, I get the first turn, and I see that, oh, okay, experimental drug's one of the objectives, and I've nominated my Sophatect as the data tracker. Turn 1. Guangxi goes unconscious by using biolocator, doesn't require a wall, he just goes unconscious, he's behind a big wall, total cover. Next order, spend the data tracker special order, Sophatect goes over to the Guangxi and revives him. Or if I fail that and he dies, I do it again with another Guangxi and try and revive him. I've got 8 Guangxi after all, it's going to be pretty easy. And then that is plus 1 point for collecting the experimental drug card, plus another 2 points for doing it with the data tracker. I'm now up 3 points. And then let's say for the rest of the turn, I just spend another 10 orders on my Sujian going on a suicide run to kill their data tracker, and then move it over to them. And in their turn, maybe they wanted to do experimental drug but now can't. My Sujian is out in the field there. Maybe they can get a data scan or something on it, but maybe not. I mean, it's going to be able to reset every time, and it can't be put into unconscious state because I just NWI it and pull it off the board if I want to. So, scenario like that, you can imagine the mission not being particularly fun for the player on the receiving end of that. Guaranteed, there are going to be a lot of people out there who do have fun with the mission and a lot of games that do work out well, but my criticism is that this is a mission that really does allow for a lot of dud games that a lot of people don't like. Whereas if you go on a mission like Firefight or Supremacy or Supplies, you're generally going to have a game of it for both sides, no matter what faction they're playing, no matter who wins the roll for first turn, that kind of thing, and you get to play some real infiNity. It becomes about the profiles and the lists and and the scenario. It's balanced, so it's good. Yeah, so not a huge fan of Countermeasures, unfortunately. Time will tell. It's good that there are 3 HVTs out there. Makes it a bit easier for some of the classifieds to be scored. But again, you could have a table where one player's got 3 HVTs all behind one big wall, and another player who can't really put any of their HVTs in good locations. So not great. Each HVT may only be used to accomplish one classified objective. Once a classified objective targeting that HVT has been completed, that HVT model is removed. So that's interesting, but are there any restrictions on placing HVTs all together? Because in that example I just gave, technically if there's a really good place for them to hide, you could stuff all 3 of them in the same place, which is kind of funny. Anyway, don't particularly like it. Before we finish up this little review, I'll also say a couple of things about the Army 6 update that's happened recently. Wild Bill is now a wildcard model. I thought he was interesting and kind of viable by himself, but now that he's a wildcard and can go in a core link, I feel like it's just going to be a bit oppressive some of the time. It's not as crazy as Shishkin or the Ruishi being in core links. Those guys are just a bit too much, given the context of what can surround them. But yeah, Wild Bill, if he's firing his rifle, he'll be hitting on 19s, assuming there's no other visual mods, because he ignores cover, he's got the link bonus and everything. You'll be on 4 dice and he'll have shock. And there are going to be some times where that becomes a bit too oppressive, and I don't really like you feeling you're really paying enough points for what you're getting for that. So, but if you made him more expensive, he wouldn't be great on his own as much, so I felt like a better middle ground would have been there. But hey, they've got to sell copies of his model, so I feel like they wanted to make him strong. Really eyebrow-raising that a lot of models have journalists now. That's really for the scenario more than anything. The Concilium Watch, I thought it kind of funny that Dr. Worm got an SMG and was 1 point cheaper as a result. SMG is actually going to make him better in a lot of cases. Sometimes I prefer the combi rifle, so I will take that profile sometimes, but if I need to save a point, that's a great way to save a point. But yeah, new season, kind of disappointing. It's a shame that we're going to have to play for an entire year without really seeing any big positive changes. I was really hoping that some of the bad missions were going to go away or be, cured and fixed. Yeah, wasn't really a fan of that. I mean, you look back at Capture and Protect, Looting and Sabotaging. These are missions that really are hard to get around jammers. You know, it's great to have a veteran model to go in there to complete the mission. Otherwise, you're in a lot of trouble. But not everybody has access to that. Similarly with Armory, you know, you're forced to go towards the middle of the table. Your opponent can very easily set up jammers in that sort of facility. So if you're playing O12, you don't really have any veteran troops. Transmission Matrix, unfortunately, still is kind of terrible for factions that normally want to rely on a lot of hackable stuff and don't have a lot of their own hackers, like Pan-O would be my thing there. Biotech Vor, I noticed that some of the custom missions in that competition were trying to make a better version of that, but it seems like Biotech Vor still hasn't been changed enough to really make me interested in it. One thing I thought would have been better about Biotech Vor would have been to change the actual deployment of it. Where is it? Biotech Vor. So it's still like you deploy in the 8-inch strip, which is, you know, very narrow, and you've still got to clear that entire zone there. So yeah, definitely a lot of room for improvement, and we didn't see a lot of it. So that's a shame. Let me know if you agree with me. I'm sure a lot of you guys don't really agree with a lot of stuff I've said here. That's normal. That's allowed. I probably don't agree with a lot of stuff that's out there as well. But it is what it is, and we're now going to be playing Stakeout for another year. But hey, infiNity's still a good game. Still enjoying it. Still looking forward to playing games, and we'll have some more O12 material for you guys pretty soon.